Zachary Kalens. Kalens is in prison for executing his parents inside their Texas home after throwing a tantrum over his household responsibilities and schoolwork. He was 16 years old at the time of the murders. The fatal shootings occurred on August 11, 2014, in the Dallas-Fort Worth suburb of Frisco, Texas. Kalens, who was homeschooled, harbored deep resentment toward his parents. Friends noted that he frequently complained about his household being too strict. The friction reached a breaking point when his parents punished him and stripped him of his personal privileges for refusing to finish his school assignments and daily chores. Enraged by the discipline, Kalens retrieved a gun, walked into his parents' bedroom, and shot them both to death. When police arrived at the house following a report of shots fired, they found Kalens standing outside in the driveway next to his sister. A responding officer overheard Kalens casually explaining to his sister that he did it. When his shocked sister asked if murdering them had been his actual plan, he explicitly confirmed to her that it was. Ryan Kalens was 48 years old and Zachary's father. Maria Elena Kalens was Zachary's mother and 49 years old. Due to the horrific nature of the double homicide and the profound lack of remorse shown during evaluations, a juvenile court judge ruled that Kalens should be certified and tried as an adult. During his September 2016 trial, his defense team argued that the teenager was entirely socially isolated and emotionally broken by his parents. They even attempted to pivot blame by suggesting that one of Kalen's siblings or the father himself may have been responsible for the gunfire. The prosecution countered this narrative by introducing Kalen's own immediate confession to his sister in the driveway. On September 23, 2016, a Collin County jury rejected the defense's arguments and found Kalens guilty on 2 counts of murder. 3 days later, the jury assessed his punishment at life in prison for each individual murder count. The presiding judge heavily criticized Kalens during sentencing, explicitly labeling him a dangerous threat to society who refused to show even a shred of regret for the executions. Aaron Campbell. Campbell is in prison for the horrific abduction, essay, and murder of a 6-year-old girl on a Scottish island. He was 16 years old at the time of the crime. The crime happened in the early hours of July 2, 2018, on the Isle of Bute in Scotland. Campbell initially left his home with the intention of breaking into a nearby seafront flat to steal Mary Jane. He knew the residence because he had previously purchased drugs from the homeowner. Finding the front door unlocked, Campbell slipped inside the property. While searching the home, he found a 6-year-old girl sleeping in a bedroom. Campbell lifted the child from her bed and carried her out of the house into a dark, secluded wooded area. He inflicted 117 separate injuries on her before essaying her and smothering her to death. He then dumped her naked body on the grounds of a disused hotel and threw her clothes into the sea. When police began reviewing local CCTV footage, they caught Campbell making multiple late-night trips outside his home. During these trips, he changed his clothes, washed his hands, and retraced his steps. DNA evidence recovered from the victim's body directly linked him to the attack. 6-year-old Alicia MacPhail was a young girl from North Lanarkshire. She had arrived on the island just a few days prior to spend a 3-week summer break visiting her father and grandparents. Due to his age, Campbell's identity was initially protected by Scottish media laws during his 9-day trial at the High Court in Glasgow. He pleaded not guilty and went to extreme lengths to deflect blame. He took the witness stand, claimed his DNA had been planted, and lodged a special defense specifically framing his victim's father's 18-year-old girlfriend for the murder. The jury rejected his lies and found him unanimously guilty. Following the verdict, the judge lifted the media ban, allowing Campbell to be publicly identified. While awaiting sentencing, Campbell completely changed his story. During interviews with a court-appointed psychologist, he fully confessed to the crimes. He coldly admitted that he had been fantasizing about essay for a year and viewed the sleeping child as a moment of opportunity. The psychologist noted that Campbell displayed severe traits of psychopathy. He was entertained by the thought of the essay and admitted it took everything in him to stop from laughing out loud during his own murder trial. In March 2019, Judge Lord Matthews described Campbell as a cold, calculating, remorseless, and dangerous individual and sentenced him to life detention with a minimum term of 27 years. Of course, Campbell appealed the length of his term, arguing it was excessive for a minor. In September 2019, the Criminal Appeal Court in Edinburgh agreed that the trial judge had not given enough weight to the mitigating effects of youth and reduced his minimum term to 24 years. Campbell remains incarcerated. He will not be eligible to apply for parole until 2042, though the judiciary has explicitly warned that due to his dangerous psychological profile, he may never be safely released. Miguel Cano. Cano is in prison for the gruesome premeditated stabbing murder of his mother, a crime he committed inside their family home when he was just 13 years old. He is currently serving a 23-year sentence in an adult state prison. The murder occurred on August 31, 2015, in Simpsonville, South Carolina. Cano, who was 13 at the time, had spent months meticulously planning to kill his mother and others, hoping to steal money after the murders. On the day of the crime, Cano carried out his plan, launching a brutal attack inside their residence. He stabbed his 44-year-old mother more than 28 times across her face, neck, and chest. A flooring contractor arriving at the home the next morning discovered Cano hiding in the crawl space under the house, surrounded by dripping blood. Cano calmly admitted to the contractor that he had killed his mother the night before. When questioned by investigators from the Greenville County Sheriff's Office, Cano gave a full videotaped confession. He expressed a disturbing lack of initial remorse, stating he woke up wanting to act on his violent fantasies. Isabel Cristina Zuluaga was 44 years old. She died at the scene from multiple sharp force injuries. Because of the horrific nature and calculated premeditation of the crime, prosecutors pushed to transfer him out of the juvenile system. Family and friends testified that while Cano was smart, he harbored a troubling fascination with violence and frequently talked about murder. A judge officially ruled that he could be tried as an adult, which exposed him to a much harsher adult prison sentence instead of a juvenile facility where he would have been freed by age 21. Following his arrest, Cano was formally diagnosed with autism. His defense attorneys argued his condition severely impacted his ability to process emotions, using his diagnosis to advocate for leniency. In October 2019, prosecutors accepted a plea deal. Cano, then 17, pleaded guilty to a reduced charge of voluntary manslaughter to avoid a potential life sentence. During his sentencing hearing, Cano read a prepared statement in a calm voice, calling his actions a horrible evil thing. Judge Letitia Verdon sentenced him to 23 years in an adult prison, citing that the extreme brutality and months of planning outweighed his young age and diagnosis. He is serving his term at the Allendale Correctional Institution with a projected release date in March 2035. Dylan Cardell Hack. He is in prison for ambushing and strangling a 24-year-old corrections officer to death during an escape attempt from a detention facility. He committed the murder when he was 15 years old, and now he is serving a sentence of 60 years to life. On December 3, 2013, Cardell Hack and an accomplice committed an armed robbery at a quick stop convenience store in Mitchell, Nebraska. He was apprehended and held at the Scouts Bluff County Detention Center in Gering, Nebraska. On February 14, 2014, while being held in isolation for the robbery charges, Cardell Hack orchestrated an escape attempt. Security footage showed him luring corrections officer Amanda Baker into his cell by pointing to an object on the floor near his bed. When Baker knelt on her hands and knees to investigate, Cardell Hack blindsided her, jumped on her back, and locked her in a severe chokehold. He continued to strangle her on the floor for more than 2.5 minutes until she lost consciousness, allowing him to steal her keys. Baker suffered severe brain damage from the prolonged oxygen deprivation and died at the hospital 2 days later. Investigators consequently learned that another teenage inmate, Guy Eagle Elk, had deliberately taught Cardell Hack the lethal choking technique used in the attack. Amanda Baker was just 24 years old and a corrections officer at the Scott Bluff County Detention Center who had been employed there since 2012. She was a young mother to a toddler son. During his November 2014 trial, the defense team argued that Cardell Hack only intended to knock the officer out to steal her keys, rather than killing her, pushing the jury to consider a lesser manslaughter charge. After 7 hours of deliberation, the jury rejected first-degree premeditated murder but found him guilty of second-degree murder. Cardell Hack received 2 separate prison terms to be served consecutively, which is back-to-back, an initial 8 to 15 years for the convenience store armed robbery and an additional 60 years to life for the second-degree murder of Officer Baker. Cardell Hack appealed his sentence, arguing it was excessive for a juvenile and that his trial was tainted because jurors physically reenacted the choking scene in the deliberation room. The Nebraska Supreme Court rejected his claims and unanimously upheld his conviction. He remains incarcerated and will not be eligible to apply for parole until 2045. His accomplice, Guy Eagle Elk, was convicted of felony aiding and abetting an assault and received a prison sentence for his role in advising Cardell Hack on how to perform the chokehold.